I am going to be recording this session. So we had about 25 people sign up. There's 8 on the line now. So the recording will be made available. And I did also want to mention that we are going to be talking about our new product, the Wellness Monitor. And for those of you that signed up today, we have a list, obviously, of attendees. And you'll earn a $100 discount if you decide to purchase a GEMPro just by attending today. So we're going to essentially pay $100 for an hour of your time for attending today. So I wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If there's any questions during the conference or webinar rather, I invite you to, I think most people are muted. You either unmute yourself and ask, or you can type in under chat, or there's a question panel in your control panel if you want to ask a question. And then at the end, we'll just have an open conversation. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The unmet clinical need in dentistry, according to DDME. Sleep apnea is on the rise, primarily because of obesity and our health choices. Abnormal parafunction and OSA are linked. Tooth wear is also on the rise, probably for the same reasons. Today's dentists really cannot afford to ignore these facts. You can choose not to treat sleep apnea, but you really, as you know, this link between airway and parafunction is so pervasive in a practice, it really doesn't suit anybody to just ignore it and pretend it's not there. And the other unmet clinical need is, when you're making an appliance, is that the right appliance, and did it have the intended outcome? And that is something that's typically answered by asking the patient how they're doing. And we believe there's, in addition to that, there's other things we can do to ensure the intended outcome is achieved. So at the core of everything that we're talking about is the relationship between the airway and parafunction. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see there's a series of blue boxes and a couple blue lines there. Those boxes and lines represent apneas and hypopneas, airway problems. And above those boxes is a masseter EMG signal. And you can see that after almost every one of those airway events is a clench. And do you think that this contributes to tooth wear? Do you think that this causes problems with dealing with restorations if this isn't known? Do you think this causes problems when you make a guard for a patient and this issue gets worse? You know, these are all rhetorical questions, but we think it's vital that dentists at least know that this is going on and then, make decisions accordingly rather than just make it an appliance and then hope that the appliance does what we want it to do. All right, so the next couple slides I'm going to skip through because the things that I'm going to be talking about today are very well researched, and I included in attending the webinar, I should mention, if you go to handouts, you'll see 5 handouts there. And one of the handouts is this presentation. So if you wanted to research more thoroughly some of the topics that we're going to talk about, I do have a bibliography of topics that I've researched and incorporated into my presentation. So the next few slides are for example, these references are for the OSA and parafunction link. These 2 studies documented the link between guards and compromising the airway. And these research articles are talking about implant overloading and what some of the triggers or what some of the reasons for overloading are. Okay, so I'm going to talk quite a bit on those 3 topics, and I just wanted you to know that these are the research articles I base some of what I talk about on today. Okay. Implementing the GEMPro. So the GEMPro is an instrument. It's a dental instrument that we've created, and essentially DDME for 7 years now have been partnering with dentists on treating patients diagnosed with sleep apnea using oral appliance therapy. There's a wealth of dental information in sleep studies. Okay, and one of the barriers in gaining access to that wealth of information is that because sleep apnea is a medical condition, the gateway to that information is a physician. And I think that's obviously the way it should be, and we all practice that, and it's a well-worn path. However, that wealth of information, I believe some of it should also be available to dentists not necessarily interested in treating a medical condition, but wanting to practice dentistry. So right now, the path to that was, okay, well, I have to do a sleep study to get some of this information. And we believe that that data is so valuable that there needs to be a path for dentists to do dentistry. The GEMPro is that path, okay? So let me explain to you how the GEMPro gets implemented into a dental practice and why you would do it. The GEMPro is not just for patients you suspect might have apnea. It's for, if you're going to do restorations, it can improve restoration outcomes involving implants, crowns, and bridges. We'll talk more about that. The reason for that improvement outcomes is occlusal overloading is the primary cause of implant failure, and if we could reduce or eliminate overloading, that can only improve the clinical outcomes in some of those patients that are at risk for biomechanical failures. Number 3, single arch splints are associated with increased airway complications. And we've done, I've talked extensively about that. If you've ever attended one of my webinars, you'll know that I have a kind of almost a passion for that. And it's such, I think it's such an easy problem to address. I really believe that, most, if not all, dentists can easily manage deciding what, is this patient suitable for a splint, or do they need something more significant? It's a fairly easy question to get answered. Number 4, reduce risk of occlusal appropriate appliances for tooth protection. Meaning, if you pick the right appliance, your outcomes are likely to improve. And if you don't know, you don't know. Conveniently titrate OSA appliances from your patient's home. This is a big one. So we've incorporated some technology into the GEMPro that allows you to do a test from the patient's house, and in the morning, the GEMPro will email you a report from the patient's house. So before the patient's even done with a shower, you know what went on the night before. So if you're, let's say, going to titrate a patient, maybe you just fit them for the appliance, they've had it for a week, so you send them home, the appliance for a week, you send them home with the GEMPro and see where your starting point is. And then you can improve, maybe make a change, an adjustment in the appliance and do another test. The test is really inexpensive and it's easy to perform. So we think that that's going to be a big one. So number 5, for you folks treating sleep apnea is a big benefit. Number 6, this one, number 6, personally, I'm not a dentist. Most of you guys know I'm not a dentist, so I might have oversimplified this. I probably have. But if I could say we could prevent tooth wear from ever occurring in many patients, and those patients that have airway-related parafunction, and if we detect that before tooth wear appears, then we can prevent tooth wear. And so that just seems to be such a foreign concept of preventing tooth wear. But I believe it is possible. And then number 7, implementing a profitable snoring program while managing OSA risks. Okay, so by that I mean you don't want to just put in a snore guard, because we know snoring and OSA are also linked. So if you're going to treat somebody for snoring, you want to make sure that's what they have, that they don't actually have OSA. And so an easy way to do this is with the GEMPro, and I'll explain to you how that works when we talk about the product itself. Okay. All right. Okay, practices performing restorations. Why are you doing a restoration? There's a reason, or maybe a number of reasons. And determining the underlying cause of tooth wear, there are there are certain types of tooth wear, not all tooth wear. I'm not that, I know that, but in certain types of tooth wear, we can identify what the problem is and fix it. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to fix the problem and then fix the restoration, or have a successful restoration? Because if we know the cause and we can eliminate or reduce the cause, we're really actually treating the problem and fixing the aesthetic issue or the functional issue. Reduce, number two, if you're doing restorations, reduce parafunction by the appropriate appliance. Okay, this is simple. If you have an airway patient and you don't know they're an airway issue, and you put a single arch guard in to protect your restoration, the risk of overloading increases because you're causing the very problem that probably contributed to the needing a restoration, or maybe was the cause for needing the restoration, and you've made that very problem worse, or you have risk, let me rephrase that, you may have made the very problem worse if they're airway related. If they're not airway related, never mind, put in a guard, but wouldn't it be nice to know? And in overloading, we know overloaded for structural failures, that's the issue. Reduced parafunction, okay, relates to less warranty work. That's not rocket science. It's almost silly to say. Number four, improper tooth protection strategies. Okay, when I say improper, maybe that's not fair to say it that way. When you protect the teeth and you don't know exactly why the patient has needed a restoration, then there's a chance that guard is going to cause problems. Okay, and here's one of the main problems, is if a person has an at-risk airway and you put them on a guard and that airway gets worse, that's going to be very uncomfortable for that patient to wear that guard. Okay, so now we're talking about a compliance issue. Okay, so now not only are we at risk for overloading, the teeth are unprotected. You may ask the patient, no pun intended, they may lie through their teeth and say, I swear to God, I'm wearing this guard, and they're not. And the reason they're not is because the clenching and grinding is a result of an airway issue that is made worse by this single arch guard. So you can kind of see a pattern there, and it's really simple to avoid that pattern. And using the incorrect, number 4 and 5 are related. Using the incorrect protective appliance can increase parafunction. Okay, so number 5, here's the point on number 5, and here's the open question. Okay, if your position is, I've always used guards and I've never had a problem. The thing to think about is when you use a guard and the patient is now biting on the guard, the forces that they're creating are dispersed among many more teeth, so there's not so much concentrated force. So that's kind of the strategy there. And you're putting obviously something in the occlusal plane. So if you disperse the energy and you have something in the occlusal plane, your enamel's protected. But here's what you need to think about. If it is at one of those at-risk patients, and there's a percentage, it might be 15%, it might be 60%. I don't know what's the percentage of patients that have compromised airway doing restorations, but there's a percentage. And in that percentage group, if you've made the airway worse, okay, you're protecting enamel, but at what cost? Okay, sleep apnea and the airway are medically, significant issues. They really can't be overstated how bad it is to have sleep apnea over time. It's on a par with smoking or worse. And now, if you've made that problem worse, behind the idea that you're protecting the enamel, is the patient really better off overall? Probably not. And especially if we can get them in the right appliance that would not only protect your restoration, but not compromise the airway. Okay. Occlusal guards, this is a quick slide. If you've ever seen one of my presentations, you've probably seen this slide. So these are 14 patients that we studied that were tooth wear or TMJD patients, not OSA patients. They all were prescribed a single arch guard, and we just wanted to see, okay, what happened to the airway in patients that are being treated with a guard? And we found that the airway gets worse most of the time. You know, in this case, 10 of the 14 patients got worse. Some of them didn't get worse in a significant way. 4 got better, okay? But 8 of the 10 did get worse in a significant way. And in some cases, like if you look at patient number 10, okay, the first column, patient 10, their baseline AHI, apnea and hypopnea index, was 13. And in the presence of the guard, it was 26. We doubled the severity of the apnea in that patient. So in other patients, we halved it. So like if you look at patient 12, they started at 24.6 and ended at 12.4. Okay, so, and you know, the point is the airway is going to do what the airway is going to do. And there's really no way to predict in advance. I know there's some daytime things people are doing, but I find that daytime testing doesn't have great linearity with what happens at night when you're sleeping. So at the end of the day, we just, you know, the whole point here is let's do a test and see what's going on. Okay, so incorporating the GEMPro into your practice. So it's important to visualize this, and I wanted to divide dental practices into 2 groups. The first group is practices already treating OSA and how they would use the GEMPro, and the second group is practices not treating sleep apnea. Okay, so for the first group, when you're screening patients, so you either receive diagnosed patients already, or you do some type of screening, and then you either have a physician diagnose the patient for you or you refer them to a sleep lab. So how that practice would use the GEMPro is you would expand your net. And by that I mean you could sit down with a patient on a consult and say, hey, geez, looks like there's some interior tooth wear here. I'd like to do a quick study. It's not going to cost much, if anything. And let's see if we can identify the cause of the tooth wear and prevent further wear from occurring, and send them home with the GEMPro. And in the case where the tooth wear is a result of parafunction secondary to sleep apnea, you have you've created another sleep apnea patient for yourself behind the idea that you're examining tooth wear. A dentist talking to a patient about tooth wear is a very natural conversation. A dentist talking to a patient about sleep apnea is not as natural. So this is a good transition or screener tool to bring in patients into your sleep practice. And then the second bullet there I already mentioned is you can titrate patients from home. So you send the GEMPro home, and I'll talk in just a moment or two about how you do that. And then, okay, so the second practice, you know, the general dentist, not treating. Okay, well, you know, it's a little deceiving because the general dentist doesn't know whether or not their patient has sleep apnea, you know, unless the patient says something. So in some way, you know, general dentists are treating patients with sleep apnea. They're just not treating sleep apnea. Okay, and it's, I feel that even a general dentist should know if their patient has sleep apnea. And why? Well, we can prevent excessive tooth wear. Okay, so if a general dentist does a GEMPro study and they have some snoring and some clenching, make them a low-end snore guard. Protect their teeth and help them with snoring. Another reason is improve restoration outcomes. Okay, if you got somebody who has severe desaturations from the GEMPro study and severe parafunctional activity, do you want to manage that patient's airway first by referring them to a sleep lab, or do you want to go proceed with your restoration knowing that the reason that patient needs restoration is, you know, the parafunction secondary to airway? Okay, wouldn't that be nice to know? Add snore treatment. You know, if we have a way we can manage patients that actually are apneics that snore, and we can triage that and refer the ones with apnea out and treat the patients who snore, you know, that's a nice revenue stream. Snoring is a nice topic. It's a nice marketing topic. And, you know, the risk has always been, okay, if you decide to treat snoring, you give them a snore guard and hope that the apnea gets better. You know, with the GEMPro, we can triage that. And And I think most importantly, the last bullet, know when to refer the patient to a physician. Don't try to, if you're going to start a snore treatment service in your practice, you really should avoid putting a guard in a sleep apneic patient. You know, at the end of the day, just saying I'm treating you for snoring and here's a snore guard, when you know that snoring and apnea are linked, that's not a real strong position, in my personal opinion. And keep in mind, I know I don't have a practice. It's almost not fair for me to say that, but just from a optimistic or ideal perspective, that's my view on that. Okay, so let's now I'm going to kind of transition the talk a little bit. Before I kind of go into the next view, I'm going to just pause here and I'm going to look and see if I haven't been looking for questions. It doesn't look like there's any questions. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a lurking question out there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to now transition to the nuts and bolts of this. Okay, so number one, GEMPro, it's a quick and easy test for every dentist, and it's inexpensive in my opinion. The first 50 tests for the GEMPro, there's no per test fee. They're included in the price of it. Customer support and services. DDME has always felt, and our whole business model is, we sell a thing, but more importantly, tied to that thing is support services, because there's skills, expertise, and clinical expertise that will enhance both your experience and your patient's experience. And if you can, the person that you bought the device from can help you with those services and expertise, that becomes a very valuable part of your purchase. That's always been our philosophy, and it continues to be today. And then number three, for those dentists that wish to expand over time into full dental sleep medicine, if you have a service contract with the GEMPro, you have access to the T3. So for a fee, if you have a GEMPro, you say, geez, it looks like you have a bunch of desaturations below 89%. Maybe I'll order a sleep study from DDME using the T3 and get you diagnosed. So that's a benefit of the service contract on the GEMPro. You can do a T3 study, the more elaborate diagnostic medical instrument, without actually buying the unit. And if it works out well and you find it to be supportive of what you want to accomplish with your practice, at some point it will make sense for you to buy your own T3. But that's not no longer is that the first thing you have to do is make that big investment. So we have a kind of a path, and you can do the GEMPro and keep the GEMPro. If you want to expand into sleep diagnostics, we have a way to get your toe wet by basically renting the unit on a per use fee from us, and then you could expand into sleep over time if that's what you want to do. All right, so let's talk about the GEMPro's features and benefits. I did want to mention you can actually download the GEMPro. It's an app on a tablet, and it's available today. And if you go to the Play Store and you type in, do a search in Play Store, DDME bruxism, and install the app. The app will work on any screen 7-inch tablet or bigger. If you download it on your Android phone, and when I say tablet, an Android tablet, on the phones, if you have an Android phone, you can download it, but some of the screens won't look right because it's so small. So just so you know, if you have any type of Android tablet, go for it. Download it, go to DDME bruxism, and then when it's installed under the patient part, I'll show you how to do that in a second. You just type in demo. So here's a slide. Go to Google Play, search for DDME bruxism, and then you'll see. I just noticed yesterday the GEMPro relies heavily on Bluetooth technology, and our icon is a Bluetooth. So I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but it just occurred to me yesterday. But anyway, this is what the app looks like. So if you've downloaded it on your tablet, and then you type in demo at the bottom, see where it says patient login, type in demo on the capital letters, and you'll get to see a lot of how the app works. And that's for free, by the way. All right. I did want to mention that we have been selling the GEMPro for a while, a month or so, a couple months now. And at the end, I'd see that I have a couple of people that are using it, so I might ask them to chime in and share their experience with actually using it in their practice. So on the GEMPro, here's what you get. Everything comes in a case. For those of you that have a T3, I was highly inspired by the diagnostic, the T3 case. So we had there's two sensors. There is an amp, that's on the upper left. And then on the lower left, there's an oximeter, and we record the following channels: oxygen level, heart rate, bruxism or parafunction, snoring, and body position. I mean, those are powerful channels in my opinion. And this is a dental instrument. This is not a medical diagnostic instrument. You can't diagnose sleep apnea with the GEMPro, and it's not intended to do that. In fact, we shy away from that because this is a dental instrument for dentists only. Okay, so those 5 channels get recorded with those 2 sensors, and the idea here is that the 2 sensors use Bluetooth, and they transmit the data to the tablet, and then the tablet consolidates the data, puts them on the same timeline, and then in the morning you click in study, and then if the patient's on Wi-Fi in their home, the PDF report gets emailed to you automatically. The patient doesn't have to do anything but in test, and the tablet just knows based on your account to email you the report. If they don't have Wi-Fi, then you'll get the report when the tablet gets returned to your office. Okay, that's kind of an image of the report, which we'll talk about a little bit. The sensors are rechargeable batteries, so you don't have to buy batteries. And the only consumable is a foam pad. You get 50 of those with your first included in the kit. And then if you, on your 51st study, those foam pads are like 80 cents each. So technically you could, think of this as the cost is less than 80 cents per test. Now, the other thing to know about this slide is they are rechargeable. When you get the oximeter and amp back, just recharge them. The tablet has to be plugged in, so you don't have to worry about the battery on the tablet. The tablet has 2 modes, patient mode and dentist mode. This is what dentist mode looks like, and you fill out forms. It's very intuitive. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but one of the things we've added recently is, okay, what kind of tooth wear are we talking about, and how severe is it? So there's some questions about that, and then there's the obvious physiological questions, height and weight, and some of that. The tablet's going to automatically create a PIN for your patient because we don't want, each patient has to have their own login. So the tablet generates a 4-digit code, and you give that 4-digit code to your patient while you're training them how to do the test, and we'll talk about that in a second. You'll notice if you do decide to proceed, there's a second option here that is not active yet. It's report and raw data. We're always developing products, and that's going to be for future products that we're very excited about. So this is how you turn the sensors on. There's a little switch on the app, and there's a blue button on the oximeter. Pretty straightforward. The sensors use Bluetooth, so just like any Bluetooth, you have to pair them. And essentially pairing is turn the 2 sensors on, and then you click scan, and then that's it. The 2 devices have these codes, and when you see those codes, you're done. So at that point, you're done with the patient. So now I just wanted to spend a second talking about how you train your patient. On the right, you can see a picture of a person. That's the amp clipped to the shirt, and then the oximeter is a wrist oximeter with a finger probe. Okay. So I recommend using demo mode, just walking your patient through the process. So this is the kit again, and you go through. At this point, if I'm sitting with a patient, I would enter DEMO, and I would hand my patient like an appointment card with their code and say, I'm going to walk you through what's going to happen with you tonight. And you type in demo and you just walk them through the steps. It's really simple. Okay, here's just one of the steps that they'll go through. I did want to spend a second on this step. So, as you're scrolling through the tablet, there's 4 or 5 screens that give you instructions on how to put on the sensors, and, there's a few other things. On this one, we're going to take a reading on how hard you can bite when you're awake. And we call it the waking bite force test. And this guy's forehead goes between relax and clench, and you just follow the instructions of the forehead. And then you can see we get this reading on their maximum waking bite force. And we kind of save that value. And we make some calculations based on the calibration against the pair function that we record while the patient sleeps. Another thing that we do that's cool is we measure the ambient room noise. So we can kind of do noise canceling against the snoring channel. So we'll have a very clever snoring algorithm there. Excuse me. At the end of the test, you just click End Test, and then it goes through and it sends the PDF. That's basically, you get this screen. You finished your study, the PDF has been sent, and you're done. Next is the report. And the report gives you the channels we talked about. One is the SaO2, so all your desaturations. That's a severe patient that you're looking at, by the way. And the next channel is heart rate analysis, bruxism, so those spikes are all clenches or grinds. The 4th graph down, audio analysis, that's the snoring. And then the last graph is just your calibration clench. Another thing we did that's unique and clever, in my personal opinion, because it was my idea, is the graphs are color-coded by body position. So you can see what position and what the effect of that position had on the patient's sleep quality. And finally, on this slide, there are codes tied to what we're doing here. They're medical codes. But the oximetry data and the bruxism frequency and magnitude, 94762-26 that's oximetry with a report. There's $30 or $40 on that. There's bruxism surface EMG S3900, which is a test code, and there's about the same amount of money on that. We had a dentist that has successfully billed 64505 for Medicare, or 64400 for Blue Cross Blue Shield with modifier 50 on it. And if their patient has trigeminal neuralgia, atypical face pain, chronic migraines or cluster headaches, they're getting $175 for the test. So if you're interested in trying to bill, remember that this presentation is in the handouts, and you can download it, or you can call me and say, I'm interested in those codes, right? I wanted to go over a few case studies with you. The idea here is, okay, we get these great reports, now what? So this is to the answer to the question, now what? So this patient, this is a known apneic who's been on CPAP, not compliant, also had a single arch guard made at one point due to tooth wear. This has got to be common. Somebody's got moderate to severe OSA, they've worn teeth, the dentist says, geez, look at this wear, I'm going to give you a guard. So a lot of patients on CPAP probably also have GARD. So that's why we did this. We did 3 nights with this subject. The first night was a baseline and confirmed, yeah, the patient does have moderate OSA. And they also had a fair amount of bruxism. And some snoring was noted, actually quite a bit of snoring. At the bottom there, you can see the legend for the body positions on the colors. So you can see that. There's not a positional nature to this patient, but I think I do have a report that has that. So this is the baseline. We confirmed essentially what we knew about the patient already. This is the patient on CPAP. They got a lot better, as you might imagine. Interestingly, the bruxism was almost completely eliminated. All right? So that has implications. The idea there is that if bruxism goes away when you fix the airway. We really don't have bruxism. We have whatever we want to call airway triggered parafunction. Okay, ATP, airway triggered parafunction. I just made that up. So in this case, this patient was clearly, this was the case for them. We fixed the airway and the parafunction went away. Snoring was resolved. There's a little bit of relapse there on the snoring, but hey, it's better. And so on this, this is night 3. The patient wearing their guard, and this is very common. They wear their guard. This is a single arch guard due to anterior tooth wear, and the apnea got worse. Well, the oxygen desaturations got worse. The heart rate is all over the place, so the patient's clearly not sleeping well. The bruxism was also managed. Look at that. But at what cost? Okay, you always have to ask yourself, okay, yeah, look, as a dentist, I did my job, but what about the rest of the components of your patient's life? You obviously have to take that into account, and we made the apnea quite a bit worse on a moderate apnea. Okay. All right. Next one is next case study is a more typical bruxism patient, and I use the term idiopathic bruxism, and this is traditional bruxism because I do like to distinguish between airway triggered parafunction and bruxism, as dentists are trained in dental school about bruxism. So as a female, we know she has bad bruxism. She's had 12 restorations. She is chewing through or eating an appliance a quarter, and she continues to have pain. She's essentially non-compliant because she's just not happy with her treatment. So we did a baseline with her, and I'm going to point out a couple things on this report. She really didn't have sleep apnea to speak of, but you can see she has numerous body positions. So I'm looking at the graph on the left, on the report on the left, top graph. She does have some DSATs. They're probably not enough to be worried about, but you could see just the nature of that graph is all over the place, and you look at the heart rate. As you sleep, your heart rate's supposed to go down as the sleep goes on. On hers, you do see that, but then it goes back up and down. So this is what a restless sleeper looks like. Third graph is the bruxism. Report on the left, third graph, bruxism. She is a severe clincher. We knew that, but we confirmed it. Interestingly, that calibration that I talked about yields a value, and her value was 113. That's a little above normal. 100 is about what the average person will generate when you ask them to bite down as hard as you can. When she goes to sleep, the maximum force we detected was 397. And you can see all the spikes in her graph. So she had, and then we bin the number of bursts or clenches or grinds based on how strong they are. She had 39 clenches or grinds that were at 113 or more as far as magnitude and strength. That's a tremendous number. I mean, usually 100% of CalMax for most patients you're going to study is going to be 1 or 0. So she had 39. So at the end of the day, she clenches a lot and she clenches strongly. And that's why she has such trouble. So what the dentist did is he made her another guard. Her airway was fairly healthy, so he made her a single arch guard, but he put some wire mesh on the interior, and we did a study with this wire mesh infused appliance, and look how well she did. Look how stable her airway is. So now we're looking at the report on the right, and you can see her airway is dramatically improved. There's very few body position changes, and she has the traditional heart rate arch that you want to see go down and then hang at the bottom. That's she slept really well. Look at her bruxism, the third graph on the right. Her waking biforce was 95 in this case, and her strongest force was 51, from 394 to 51. So we know that these guards work. I'm not saying that they don't work or not use them. I would never say that. That would be stupid to say. But when you can confront your patient with, okay, look, This guard works. Look at the difference it made in your sleep. And you show your patient both of these. So here's you not sleeping well. Here's you causing all kinds of pain and damage with no guard. Here's you with your new guard. And it'll inspire patients, hopefully, to be more diligent about, one, being compliant, and two, using the guard all the time. And what happened, what we learned from this, is the patient said, well, I can use the guard for a week or two, sometimes 3 weeks, and then I just can't wear it anymore. So the patient, or the dentist made her a second different type of guard. It wasn't nearly as expensive or elaborate. It says, okay, when you're tired, when your jaw needs a break, when your muscles need a break, wear this other guard for a week. And you're not going to do quite as well, but you're going to be comfortable, but your teeth will still be protected. And then go back to your main guard after no more than a week. And so now she can go back and forth between two guards to give her that break that I guess she needed. This report, this just came in. To me, I've been talking about airway-related pair function for 6 or 7 years now. 6 or 7 years ago, there wasn't a big audience for that topic. And one of the things I used to say, okay, let's talk about positional bruxism, and people would usually laugh or think I was being silly. But when we're talking about airway-triggered bruxism, here is a classic example. Red is on your back and green is on your right side. So if you go right down the line, SaO2, first graph, heart rate, second graph, third bruxism, third graph, snoring, fourth graph, and then they go to their right and you see how they sleep on their right. All this patient needs to do is get off their back, and you're done. If you don't know that, you're like, oh, geez, the CPAP, this, that. If you can successfully get this patient on their back, get them one of those pillows. They're expensive. They're $100 to $300 for these fancy pillows that keep you off your back. But prescribing a pillow as opposed to, let's say, CPAP. If you know that your patient's like this, most patients say, heck yeah, I'll buy a nice pillow. And and do a test. Say after they use the pillow, send them home with the GEMPro. Make sure that they are staying in the green, staying off their back. You get 2-3 nights with them where the graph is totally green and it's normal. You've treated your patient with a pillow. Okay. All right. I did want to just take a moment to, before I move on to the T3, what I thought I might do is, I see Dr. Bouzis is on the call. He has had a GEMPro for a while. He was an early adopter. So maybe, Dr. Bouzis, if you wouldn't mind, just maybe take a couple minutes and share with the group your experience with the GEMPro.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I actually started off with the T3 because the GEMPro wasn't available. And that was sort of an intriguing device because I got involved with that because Jeff was doing some stuff with Gordon Christensen, and it was looking at bruxism. And then I've been involved with the GEMPro for, I think maybe late December. It was kind of in the developmental stage, and I just want to make a couple of comments here, which I think are kind of pertinent to this process. One is you can't have a patient clench as hard as they can during waking hours and have them reproduce the same force they can do at night. It's just not possible. So when you do something where you're looking at bruxism with EMG studies, it's kind of amazing to the patient. I mean, even if they don't think they need a night guard or a sleep appliance, you show them how much they're bruxing at night or the forces are generated, and it's just off the chart compared to what they can do during the day. Same thing happens during oxygen desaturations. You can't hold your breath and desat as much as you do at night. So really a GEMPro or something like that, and really the GEMPro is the only thing on the market that really accomplishes this. We really need to start looking at bruxism a little bit differently. Some of the things that dentistry has done for decades, we've always thought that we could sort of stop bruxism by adjusting occlusions and other odds and ends. And the reality of it, for the most part, we've helped with NTI appliances. So James Boyd has really helped that process. But the reality of it is we've kind of protected the teeth. We haven't really stopped bruxism. As a matter of fact, we've caused some bruxism by aggravating airways. I don't know about everybody else on this line here, but I've put night guards in people that were wearing CPAPs. Probably not a very good thing to do. Now we can look at our patients that have bruxism, use it as a conversation piece or a trigger to go ahead and run a GEMPro study, and then we can differentiate, like Jeff talked about here. We can differentiate. Do we have what's called sleep bruxism or just idiopathic bruxism, and can we put a night guard in, or do we need to look into something a little differently? And really, without this device, you really don't have much of a way of telling that. And then you throw in body position with it too, which is huge, because I've got patients that I've tested with this. They have some known sleep apnea because they've had sleep tests done, and it's postural, and you can do postural therapy and maybe not have to be too aggressive with treating the sleep apnea. And then you have a way of testing it afterwards. Just like Jeff says, you can have the patient take it home, and in the morning you have an email and on your computer that gives you the results. So that's just been my experience. It's been very positive. I don't want to take up a lot of time here, but I hope that helps those of you at least to understand my experience.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Booz. I appreciate that. And Dr. Booz was part of our test group, and so he did go through some grief with us as we were, we had a product, and then we started developing it, and we had to send it out to a few people, and he was one of them that helped us out. So I am grateful for his help in that area. So having said all that, I did want to wrap up by kind of describing how the program works with relation to all the other services that we provide. So we do have the Knox T3. Dr. Booz has talked about it. That's a medical diagnostic instrument, and you can diagnose sleep apnea, not you, the dentist, but a patient can be diagnosed using the T3 data. We have a network of physicians that we use. We follow the AADSM guidelines on that. You guys probably know, most of you probably know my background is in the medical side of product development. So I'm very savvy in that area. And so at the end of the day, if you have a GEMPro and you're having some success and you want to expand into getting your patients diagnosed by a network of physicians, as I mentioned earlier, we have a way for you to gain access to that without actually purchasing the device. And this just kind of brings the HST component, the home sleep study diagnostic option, to the table with very little effort on your part. How the device works, there's some similarities to the GEMPro. They come in a case. They both go home with the patient. There's a hookup process, and the similarities kind of end there. With the T3, the device comes back to your office, and then you download to a computer that has a desktop application. And that's this application. This is what it looks like. I love this. I'm a registered sleep tech, which means I'm a nerd, and we love really complicated screens like this. However, this really is not a complicated screen. How I describe this is like if you're a sound engineer and you have those big giant big giant boards with those hundreds of knobs. In reality, there's probably only 8 knobs repeated 24 times, and it's the same thing here. There's only actually 3 or 4 things here, and we kind of sort through all these great graphs, and we'll teach you how to use the application. Obviously, there's got to be some reports, and that's what's used to make the kind of next indicated step decision. So based on these numbers, what happens next, and we train you how to make those decisions. And then finally, if the decision is to get the patient diagnosed by a physician, DDME will make your data available to our physician, and our physician will diagnose the patient and then return back a report, something like what you see, that includes the diagnosis with code and a series of treatment recommendations, which when appropriate will include oral appliance therapy, and when not, won't. So, sometimes you'll be needing to refer these patients out. Okay. We also have a DDME has what we call the BRX Pro. It's a dual arch occlusal guard. So Dr. Bouzis mentioned the NTI, which has been kind of a game-changing occlusal device in it, but it has a very interesting, the T, trigeminal in NTI, we thought was a very interesting approach. So our dual arch guard is basically half arch. So the molars there's a gap in the molars for the same reason the NTI has a gap. It's adjustable. There's 4 positions, so we can set the mandible in a healthy position, or as healthy as possible within the range of adjustment. And then you get 5 millimeters of vertical. Okay, so if you're holding the mandible in a known healthy spot, you give yourself some vertical, and when you go to sleep, your mandible's not going to fall back into the airway. Those sets of attributes, we believe, reduce airway-triggered parafunction. And that's the whole point. That's why it's a dual arch occlusal guard. This is not a sleep apnea appliance. The point of its features is to reduce airway-triggered parafunction. Okay, it's inexpensive. It's custom made chairside in about 10 minutes. It's essentially 2 impression trays with an interior hinge with 4 positions, and you fill the trays with PVS, whatever PVS you use in your practice to make impressions. And you trim it up, and the patient's on their way in 10 minutes. If they like it, they're a good candidate for it, they respond well, then you have a compliant patient. The other good benefit here, and I'm going to tell a quick story. I know I'm getting low on time. But the idea here was, in my sleep apnea days, in my medical days, early in my career, I ran sleep labs. At one point, I was running a sleep lab that had 20 beds. We were doing 20 patients a night. And then we also had a DME company on the side. But it took us about a month to get from the diagnosis, authorization for CPAP, to a DME dealer, and then the patient on CPAP. There was a month there. And in that month, those patients would talk themselves out of the need for CPAP. And I always thought, I said, geez, if we could do a day after or the day of some type of therapy after they've been diagnosed, they wouldn't have that month to talk themselves out of it. And so one of the main things I wanted to achieve here is, if you do a GEMPro study and you have a patient that has any signs of anything that we talked about today, make them a dual arch guard, get them into therapy, and then figure out what you're going to do with them if further if further therapy is needed. If they're going to get a custom snore guard, take an impression, send it off to a lab, and put them in a BRX Pro. If you think they're going to need a sleep appliance while you're scheduling them to be diagnosed and then make an impression for your long-term sleep apnea guard, get them in a dual arch guard, because they'll be engaged in the therapy the whole time. And when you say to them, okay, I need $3,000 from you or your insurance for your sleep apnea appliance, and they're feeling better and they're compliant to therapy, your chances of them saying yes go way up. Okay, so that's kind of the strategy here. Here's some research, a published article that we did about the BRX Pro, and the idea that the therapy can occur the next morning is I think important, especially if you're, one, for clinical reasons, but two, you guys have to sell. One of the things that I learned about the major differences between medical and dental. If you're, let's say, at a cardiologist's office, and the cardiologist says, geez, you have this problem, that maybe the patient doesn't even perceive the problem, but they might say, oh, your artery around your heart is 40% blocked. We need to get you to do this and this and this. That patient's not going to say, no, I'm not interested in that, or I don't want to do that. They just do it. They don't have that cardiologists never have to sell. You guys, on the other hand, you might say, okay, yeah, you have some attrition on your front teeth, and there's some things we can do. Oh, well, I don't think that's a problem. Well, I don't know. It's too expensive. Can you imagine somebody saying to a cardiologist, no, I'm not going to do surgery because it's too expensive? That's just not going to happen. So we recognize that you need to sell, and I think the reports from the GEMPro will help you sell. Okay. I want to close by saying, there's a couple of options that the GEMPro represents, and I want to summarize those. Option one, if you're a general dentist or you want to start treating patients for snoring in a little more sophisticated fashion by doing a quick test before you fabricate their snore guard, this is for you. So, that's the basic level, level one. I just call level one because it's the easiest to talk about. Level two is the same thing, but you also do implants. So then we're looking at making everything that we did in level one, but we also do implants. So we might have to make some particular kind of guard in the presence of a patient with an at-risk airway. And then number three is you want to get into dental sleep medicine, and the GEMPro is your first step into that adventure. Okay, so we're talking about those three options here real quick. Level one, you can make guards, and you're going to be making some more advanced guards. And when I say advanced guards, that's going to be a guard that's a little more sophisticated because you've learned something about the patient that's going to say, hey, listen, the $80 option is not really on the table because of what we found from the test. You need a $300 option. And depending on the socioeconomic geography of your area, the $300 option is probably a tough sell. So if you have a picture and say, listen, we were hoping you were this, but you're actually that, and there's a picture, it might be an easier sell in a kind of a low economic situation. Okay. And if let's say you're going to treat snoring, if you have let's say a $400 snore guard, and somebody says, oh yeah, my wife says I snore, so I want to get treated for snoring, and you just say, okay, that's 400. The physician goes, I don't know. But if you do a GEMPro and you show them the graph, say, look, here's your snoring, and then they wear their guard, and you can see that they're wearing the snoring went away, or you can show them this from a previous patient, say, this is what we expect you're doing, and here's what we want to do with the guard, and I want to achieve with the guard, then the 400 seems to be more palatable. Okay, and then you can see just making those few little changes can generate about 50,000 a year in the practice with these numbers. Okay. The workflow would be for phase one, you screen your patient with tooth wear or the patient that wants help with their snoring, and then you show them their baseline, and then you, depending on the scenario, you say, okay, here's where we're at. I can help you with what we found, and here's the cost of whatever services that you want to provide. And then whatever that was, you fit them into appliance, and then you retest them. And then you show them. I can't stress how important it is to test them, because when you can show a patient that they benefited from it, especially if they don't perceive the problem, okay? They might say, oh, my wife says I snore. Well, they probably really don't even care that they snore, but because it bothers their wife, they're doing it. If you show them that graph, then you can say, listen, you do snore, and here's the difference, and this is why your wife is urging you. And it just kind of overstating it. And at the end of the day, if we're talking about bruxism, and you want to make sure that you did a good job without causing any other problems, make a single arch guard in the absence of any oxygen desaturations, and then do another test. And you're going to get two things out of the test. One, you're going to see, like in this case, you see dramatic reduction in EMG activity. And then you'll also know that you didn't cause any other problems. So you get two big benefits out of that. Again, the first 50 of these tests are included. I mean, and then when you're down the road, it's less than $1. Okay, let's talk about the implant. So the practice that does implants has everything we just talked about, but there's another component that the GEMPro offers, and that is, okay, if you're planning a restoration and you want to, 3 to 5% of implants fail from overloading primarily. And if overloading is a result of parafunction secondary to an airway issue, let's get rid of that. Let's manage the airway and then plan the restoration. It's that simple. It's taken a test. Okay, listen, a single arch guard may not be the best thing. Let's get them into an EMA or a silent night or some, inexpensive once they're in their implant, and let's make sure that we're not creating more forces. And then whatever it is you do a test when they're wearing that guard. Say, listen, we're going to do a test. We're going to make sure that the implant's not under any undue stress. So I want to do another quick study. So take the GEMPro home and let's do a test with you wearing your guard, and you'll make sure, and let's say, for example, you made them a silent night from GlideWell, and you see that, okay, the baseline, they had a significant amount of bruxism and secondary to an airway issue, and then you made them a silent night, and they're not too expensive. I think the silent night's 100, and I think the EMAs are 250 or something. Might be a little different, but close around there. That's estimated. And then you think about, okay, listen, the patient's airway looks better based on the reduction of whatever DSATs we saw, and we saw a big reduction in parafunction, and the patient seems to be doing well with their implants. That's a nice, tight clinical plan. There's not a lot of unknowns left there. The other thing that it will help you with is if the patient does have an airway issue or they're at risk for one, if you give them a guard, the risk of that guard causing the airway to get worse will oftentimes make the patient non-compliant to the guard. Okay? All right. Let's talk about the dental sleep medicine path. So at this program, at this plan, these are just potential plans, you've decided, okay, I'm going to get started with the GEMPro. I'm going to rent the GEMPro for a night or 2 or 4 or 10, and then maybe you're going to buy your own GEMPro. So then what you can do is become kind of a regional center of excellence. And by that I mean you can talk to your cohorts or your friends at your study club and say, hey, listen, I've kind of completed my training in sleep, and if you want to refer your potential sleep apnea patients, then refer them. And this is the process. You might be even the subject of the study club. Maybe you'll explain to them what you're doing. And we'll help you with that. Again, if that's a goal that you want to do, we're really good at getting patients from zero to where they want to be with regards to dental sleep medicine. And we've been doing it for a long time. We've literally helped hundreds of offices do it. And we'll be very happy to help you. So it's not like you have to figure everything out yourself. There's a lot to figure out. I'm not going to lie to you. To be a dental sleep specialist is work, and it's a lot of work over time. But if you have somebody with you that says, okay, the next step is to do this, the next step is to do this, and the next step is to do this, 9 months or a year down the road, you're there. If somebody says, go to a weekend seminar and Monday you're ready, that's not how it works, folks. It takes time. It really does if you want to be a dental sleep medicine, kind of an accredited specialist, if you will. Okay, it takes time. It's a lot of work, but there's an upside to being a specialist, a dental sleep medicine specialist. Look at the revenue that you can create on a. I would say this is a moderately successful practice, $1.3 million, and that's not. That's sleep appliances reimbursement at $1,500. If you do your own research, you'll know that that's a very low number. Okay, these are a lot of patients, though. So at the end of the day, if you see 20 patients a day, so you'd have to have a couple operatories going, and 9 of them will have apnea. These are the numbers. If you don't have that type of volume, we could adjust these numbers, and this is obviously going to go down. You cut it in half. We're talking about 1.75 or something. So it's a lot of money. Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to wrap up by reminding you that in the handout section of your webinar control panel, there is a new account setup. And if you're interested in the GEMPro, contact us. My phone number is 951-496-6126, or email me at jweiscarver@gmail.com. It's on most of those documents as well. There's a 2-page brochure there. On the new account setup, you just fill that out and get it over to us. There's 5 case studies. If you're interested in learning more about how to use the data, I use this as a guide. There is this presentation that I went through today. It's called the GEMPro April 19th Final. That's a 5 megabyte document, by the way. And then there's a quote. So, take a look at the quote. It has the cost of the GEMPro, the cost of our service contract. And, again, if you're interested in this, and when you communicate, yeah, I'm interested, tell me more, or I'd like to order one, be sure to mention you are at the webinar today. And even if you're listening to this after the fact that you registered for the webinar and you listened to it, you're still entitled to a $100 discount. With your quote, we'll make sure that gets reflected in your quote, okay? All right. I always end my webinars with asking if there's any questions or any comments that anybody would like. I'm going to take everybody off of mute. And it's basically a open call now. So if there's any questions anybody would like to ask, let's see here.
Jeff, this is John. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is John. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I have just kind of a comment here with respect to implant failure. If there's an article in August 2016 of oral rehabilitation, a study of 3,364 patients. Of the Bruxers, 13% of implants failed. Of the non-Bruxers, 4 to 6% failed. So wow. I think we're on the edge of a paradigm shift here. Bruxism and how we've been looking at it in dentistry in the past is really going to get just left behind, and we need to do things in a different way than what we've done for airway and for all kinds of reasons, and I just thought I'd share that with you.
Okay, yeah, that's good info. I didn't get that one. Yeah, thanks. Okay, guys, I want to thank you for attending today. I'm going to go ahead and email everyone. Thank you for attending. There'll be a link for the recording. It will take me a day or so to get that link kind of posted, but I'll do that. And if you have any questions or comments, or you want to get a GEMPro, by all means call or email me, and I'll be very happy to accommodate your request and give you the discount that we talked about, okay? Thanks again. Have a great day.